Hello and welcome to the Section 2.1 lecture today. Today we're going to start our Module 2 work, and in that we're starting to deal with some multiplication and division. So 2.1 is talking about multiplying integers, and let's go ahead and look at how we're going to do that. Oops. So we're going to first look at how we multiply integers using a number line. And it says here that you can use a number line to see what happens when you multiply a positive number by a negative number. And so at this point we should be, the implication here is that we're familiar with multiplying like two positive numbers. And now we're going to start to look at what happens when we start dealing with negatives and multiplication. Okay. So Henry made 3 withdrawals of $2 each from his savings account. And we want to look at what is the overall change in his balance. Now, the issue I have is, how is he going to take $2 out? But, okay. He wants to take $2 out every time. So here it says to graph -2, you would start at 0 and move 2 units to the left. Well, I guess that's what we have to say. Move 2 units to the left. But 3 times -2, excuse me, 3 times -2 means that we want to do that 3 times. So we're going to take -2 plus -2 plus -2. That's the same thing as 3 times -2. Okay, so to graph 3 times -2, we start at 0 and move 2 units to the left 3 times. We just said the same thing about 3 times in a row. And where do we end up? So we go -2, -2, -2. We end up at -6. So when you're dealing with change problems, right, when we just, like here, we didn't know what his bank account started at, but we just wanted to know what it ended at. And that's kind of tough to do because we don't know, again, what it started at. So we just say the overall change is from 0 being no change, and it went back to 3 times. So his overall, the change in his balance was -$6. That's weird to write it that way. Okay. In the second one here, it says that Lisa plays a video game in which she loses points. Of course. It's all we do in these video games is we lose points. And we want to know what her score is. So it says find 2 times -3. 2 times -3 means that we want to add -3 2 times. So let's do that. If she starts at 0, we go back 3 once, and we go back 3 twice. And she ends up at -6. So, that being said, notice that we have something weird going on here. I think that's going to come up in just a second. Notice how our results are kind of like the same. But what we were really looking at here is that we have 2 things that we're taking the product of. Now, the product is the answer to a multiplication problem. Words. And with that word carrying so much weight today, I'm going to say that that's going to go ahead and be our code word. Product. Okay. But what do we notice about the product of 2 integers with different signs? As in, one was positive, the other one was negative. Well, when we have different signs, product is always negative. And that's kind of the key word here, is that it's always negative. Doesn't matter which of the two things you're multiplying together is negative. Doesn't matter if one's bigger than the other. It's just always going to be negative. Okay. All right. Now let's look at multiplication with counters and how that's going to look. So it says counters representing positive and negative numbers can help you understand how to find the product of two negative integers, because that one would be kind of hard to do on the number line. Hard to think about that. So the first thing we want to look at is we want to look at negative 3 times negative 4. Sorry. And what that means, another way to think about that is if I think of negative 3 times negative 4, so I kind of paused there for a reason, okay? Thinking of the entire thing being negative, it means that we're looking at the opposite of 3 times negative 4. Now 3 times negative 4 I could do on a number line, but they're going to use counters. So we want to look at 3 times negative 4. That's what we want to focus on. And we have to remember that we're still going to have this negative out in front that we're going to deal with in a second. So 3 times negative 4 just means 3 groups of negative 4. Okay? So here's one group of negative 4, one group of negative 4, and our third group of negative 4. Okay? Now, I want to think about the opposite of that. So if I were using the actual counters, I would take all those and just flip them over, right? But basically it means that if I'm doing it by hand, I'm saying I have negative 4, and negative 4. And then I want to think about the opposite of that. So I'll turn them all into their opposites. And that gives us an answer of positive 12. Okay? And then here it says, what do you notice about the sign of a product of two negative integers? Okay, the sign of the product. So positive or negative sign. The product of two negative integers is always, got that word again, positive. Okay? And so then what do you think is going to happen with any two integers and we find their product if they have the same sign? So the only other thing that we didn't talk about is something like using this problem. If we looked at 3 times 4, what's that going to be? Well, that's also going to be positive 12. So using that with what we just did, we would say almost the same thing, but the product of two integers with the same sign is always positive. Okay, always positive. So same sign, positive. different signs, negative. All right, multiplying integers. It says the product of two integers with opposite signs is negative, the product of two integers with the same sign is positive, and the product of 0 and any other integer is 0. So those are the three keys. I like that they write that so small and so kind of nonchalant. Those three things are very key. We're going to write it this way. If I have a positive and a negative, or negative times a positive, that's going to equal a negative. So that's one key point here. Another one is a negative times a negative, or positive times a positive equals a positive. And last but not least, 0 times anything, or anything times 0 equals 0. Because when you're multiplying by 0, you're talking about 0 groups of something, or some number of groups of 0. So either way, you're going to end up with 0. So multiply 13 and negative 3. So what they ask us to do is first think about what's going to be the sign. Is it going to be a positive or a negative? Since I have a single negative in that problem, it's going to be negative. And then we multiply the numbers together, the positive forms of the numbers together. 13 times 3 is 39. So then we would say the answer is negative 39. Same thing on this one. Multiply negative 5 and negative 8. They're both negative, so that means our answer is going to be positive. Okay, 5 times 8 is 40, so we get positive 40. Last but not least, negative 10 times 0. So I have negative 10 groups of 0, and that's going to give me 0. Let's look at the your turn problems here, and we'll end with these. Okay, negative 3. Hello. There we go. Negative 3 times 5. The opposite of 3 groups of 5. 3 times 5 is 15. There's one negative there, so we have negative 15. Negative 10 and negative 2. They're the same sign, so it's going to be a positive. 10 times 2 is 20. Positive 7, negative 6, so my answer is negative. 7 times 6 is 42. 0, I can pretty much be done now, but 0 times negative 22, always going to be 0. Negative times negative is a positive. 15 times 3 is 45. Positive times positive will be positive. 8 times 4 is 32. I hope that helps make a little bit of sense out of multiplication. Make sure you get the reflection done. Go back and find the code word if you didn't write it down. And we will see you in class. Have a good day.